What is up, everybody? Welcome back here to the channel. We're talking about Devy risers and fallers. We go through this every week. We talk about guys that are going up in value, down in value. But today we're going to be looking at a whole. We're going to be looking at guys like, hey, what do we think of their season outlook? We're also going to be talking about, hey, what guys should we maybe be pivoting off of? Are we worried about as our fallers? And we got a bunch of new content in terms of, PFF numbers and new way to kind of do this video. So let me know in the comments if you enjoyed it, if you liked it. Hit that sub, go over to our Substack, take a look at that. We're giving you guys a bunch of free content over there. But first up, let's talk about Arch Manning. Man, he had a day, right? Quinn Ewers goes out with what is said to be an abdominal strain. And it looks like Arch, came in and alleviated some of those worries, right? 5 touchdowns total, 4 touchdowns through the air. That one big rushing touchdown that his uncles would be jealous of, but he scooted a little bit there. You have to like what he was able to do out in the field. And I think the big thing with Arch, coming into the year when he was coming in the freshman, I was a big proponent of like, man, his value is way too high. When you looked at his value and where he was going, it was insane. Like it was too much. And I said, hey, you don't want to draft him in the first, not yet. Then the last year, I said, hey, man, look at him. You're going to have that value now. Now he's going in that 3rd, 4th, 5th range, where that value's at. That's how you play Devy. And the nice thing is, for those of you that did draft him a little later, now you got to return on his value. He's probably at a top 5 pick heading into Devy drafts next year when you're looking at him overall. And maybe just by this one game, right? If Quinn Ewers comes back and Texas competes, but just that he went out there and was actually able to compete. You see the passing grade there, the big time throw. I think that when you're looking at the NFL rating, what he was able to do, he took what the defense gave him. I know he had a couple big throws, but he also had just a dump off to Isaiah Bond. He took for a touchdown, a big gain. Like those are the things that you really like about Arch. And when you're looking overall, like his numbers and just his weekly grades and what he's been able to do, obviously he's only gotten in 2 games this year, but the over 300 yards, the 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, you love his ADOT, his ability to push the ball downfield, especially against UTSA. But, as he gets going here, I think the big thing to know is like, okay, how's he going to do under pressure? What does that look like? What's his passing grade against big time SEC opponents? But I did see some narratives yesterday. Well, it's UTSA. Hey, you know what? I don't really care as long as he has that production. If he's giving us that production, we're excited about it just because, when Devy, it's so fickle when it comes to value. If he shows us anything, we're excited, right? And that's just how it works. And that's how you rise the Devy boards and the draft boards. Now, some other stuff to look at here, just this will be better as we get more of a sample size. But passing pressure, when you look at him under pressure, 3 for 4, you have to like that. 2 touchdown when he goes under pressure here. Those numbers are good. Now, as it goes and as we get the bigger sample size, we'll see how these improve. But my big thing is I see how did he do under pressure when blitzed, and he's fitting the bill, right? You see where he's kind of throwing the football, the numbers there. I do like this kind of outside left between the numbers. He will push it deep if he needs to. Looks really good between the numbers and over the middle. That's something I think to note when you're looking at quarterback play. How well do they throw it over the middle? Are they willing to do that? Manning, in a limited sample size, has done that in his career. So those are something to know. That's something to kind of look at when we go forward. And that's why I want to kind of show you guys. Now, next quarterback here I'm going to throw out here, Avery Johnson. You guys, if you've been watching the channel long enough, you guys know I like Avery Johnson. I wrote a big piece, basically a dynasty profile on him, a Devy profile, and he looked good this last week. 156 yards, 2 touchdowns, 17 attempts, 110 yards. So he's running the ball now. They kind of took the wheel, they took the training wheels off of him, so to speak. They said, hey, we're going to have you run here. And I think that he still got to improve as a passer, right? So I think the turnover-worthy play, the 2 big-time throws are good. The ADOT was good. NFL rating was good. But I will say as a passer, he's going to get there. I think at times when you're looking at him, it's one of those things where he needs to develop. He's got the pure athleticism, and he improved on it, right? He did have that interception against Tennessee Martin, but against Arizona, that was a big game playing Arizona. Arizona was, coming in. They thought they could maybe get that win there. And he just took what the defense gave him. I love that, like his ADOT, it's improved steadily throughout the 3 weeks that he's played there. Adjusted completion percentage was okay. I didn't think he made too many mistakes. He's always going to be a little bit of a gambler. That's the thing about him. But he did dial it in here. I do think from a rushing standpoint, though, if he can just improve that passing enough, and he has the size and frame to be a very, a legitimate NFL prospect. If he can improve that passing enough, his rushing upside from a fantasy perspective, we really like, right? So I think from just the weekly grades, he's doing it better. Remember, this is really his true season to start. This is where they kind of give him the reins a little bit. But he's got Kansas State, right where they want him. 3-0. He's got a big game coming up this week. But shout out Avery Johnson. I do think that he's improved that way. And we looking at just like, passing pressure. I think the one area that he's got to improve on is under pressure. You see that they're 10 for 17, 58-ish percentage there. Not great numbers, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And that's going to improve. I think that's one of those things that comes with reps. You see Arch, he's been able to sit behind. He's had those reps that he's needed in practice. He's kind of done those things. And just the pedigree off the field too has helped him. But then you have Avery. I think Avery is one of those things. He's got to get better. He's got to get better under pressure when blitzed. But I will say, he's looked pretty good when blitzed. And I think the big part of that is because he can get on the outside with his feet, right? He can throw. He's pretty good on the move. I think he sometimes throws better on the move, and that's just going to come with those reps and that repetition there playing football. But shout out to Avery Johnson. I thought he looked very good. He's got his team to 3-0, and I think he's ahead of the curve in terms of his development. Next guy, we haven't talked about him yet. Ryan Williams, he's pretty good. Freshman out of Alabama. We mentioned him over offseason that he's a smash pick in that second round if he was in Devy drafts, that he was going to be the best value there. We're going to talk about where we put him in a freshman draft here coming up on this video. But 4 catches, 78 yards, and a touchdown. He's looked good every week that he's played. This last week, 68.1 receiving grade, 5.57 yards per route run. ADOT is over 10 again. Missed tackles for us 2. Yak per reception, 7.5. I mean, he's a phenomenal player. He's a big playmaker. Now, Bernard had a good game too, but I think Milroe looks for him, and that's something to know. He trusts this true freshman and the value of the talent that he is. And again, remember, everybody's going to say he's 17, but he is. He is 17. He's a younger. He reclassified. And I think the one thing that's improved on, he's got, when you're thinking of the targets that he's been able to do, he's receptions. He's 12 for 10 there when he took the target share. You like that. Yards per reception is big, right? And obviously that first game is going to give that outlier because of the yards per reception because he had those 2 catches for big gains. But it's still pretty good when you're looking at the overall numbers. You love the yards per reception there. He'll probably fall himself into that 17, 18 category, somewhere in there. But over 20 right now is phenomenal. He's looked good against Wisconsin. He's looked good against other schools. So I think that's something to note too. And again, looking at his ADOT, they're going to push the ball downfield. He's a big play threat. And I think overall, when you're looking at just his numbers too, just like where he likes to get the football, he's a deep guy. 6 targets deep, over 20 plus, 4 receptions, 217 yards is ridiculous. But that's who Ryan Williams is. And he brings that extra element to this offense. And I think that when you're looking at from a dynasty perspective or just a Devy fantasy perspective, this kid is pretty much solidified himself as probably a top 4 pick when you're looking at it overall. Like when you look at the freshman draft here. So what I did is I talked to our Patreon members and I talked to some Substack people and I said, hey, where would these guys go right now? So top 10 right now when we're looking at just value and Devy mocks. They can be a little bit misleading sometimes depending on it. But you got Jeremiah Smith there, and then you got Ryan Williams. I think that Ryan Williams has pretty much assured himself a top 4 Devy pick right now if you're looking at it. This is just freshman, but probably overall, right? I think it's pretty close. I think he's definitely in the first round. But in a freshman draft, I think him and Jeremiah right now are clear cut above the other guys, right? Ryan Wingo has looked good. Mika Hudson finally got some catches, but has not looked great. Cam Coleman's looked good too. It really depends on the quarterbacks. If you believe in Dylan Raiola or DJ Lagway, you might move them up a little bit. Nate Frazier's being in there. I think undervalued. We talked about him in our Discord. I think Nate's kind of one of the more undervalued guys out there that you can go draft and go target in trades. I would definitely go kick the tires on him too. You got Moore and Bryant Wesco, 2 Clemson guys. But the big thing is, I think Ryan has solidified his value. He's a top 2 asset right now of the freshman. I think he's a top 5 asset overall, just based on his play and the way wide receivers are valued in the Devy format. And again, this is one of those things I talk about. Would I trade Ryan Williams? I don't know. I love having him on my teams, right? But if you can pivot off of him and go draft somebody else, or trade for somebody else, I would definitely look at that option, right? If you lost CMC, you lose an AJ Brown, you lose some of these dynasty pieces, you might be able to move Ryan Williams for a legitimate piece because of where he's getting valued. And you can go see where he's getting valued in Devy Dynasty rankings on our Patreon that we have. That's value, right? And you can use our trade calculator as well. Say, hey, what guys can I go out there and get for Ryan Williams? Where is he at? So go use those resources that we provide for you at our Patreon. But just to give you an idea of where he's going in freshman drafts. Now, last guy when we're talking about kind of some risers for us, Jeremiah Love, and I got to shout out Christian Williams. He was on Jeremiah Love early. He's battling right now for running back 1 of the 26 class. And I think that he's looked really good over the course of this season. 10 attempts this last week, 109 yards and a touchdown. Yards after contact, 80. Yards after contact per attempt, almost 9. Missed tackles force 3, 4, 10 plus explosive runs there. Elusive rating 242.4. I mean, he looks good, right? And in limited attempts, he didn't have to have that big game against their last opponent when you're looking at Purdue. But overall, you still like his efficiency and what he's been able to do this season. 279 yards, the 3 touchdowns. Very, very good run grade from PFF. I think the missed tackle force is great already. He had that big week against Texas A&M. And we highlighted him. I highlighted him on social media. I like that. Yards per contact over 5. Again, really like that. Explosive runs. And in a class, I would say the 26 running back class has a lot of question marks. There's some guys in that class that, who's going to pop off? Who's going to be that guy? I think Love's right there. I think Love, there's no reason why Love can't be that running back 1, 2, 3 in that range. Justice Haynes, some of these other guys out there, especially with Baxter being injured, those type of things from Texas. Like that, there's an avenue for Love now, who was a hell of a value in Devy drafts. Now, when you're looking at his elusive rating, again, 272.2 is really good when you're thinking about what he's been able to do and put on the field, make guys miss, inside out runner, gets to the outside. I love Love. I think I didn't mean to do that, but I love Love. I love his prospects as a prospect and his value, when you're looking at him overall. And so when you're looking at these guys and we talk about them, the biggest thing is you're looking for that increased value bump. Running backs tend to get that throughout the season. And again, I always say, churn them if you can, right? Churn these guys if you can. But shout out to you for drafting this kid because he is definitely a value out there in leagues. Now let's get pessimistic. Let's talk about some guys kind of falling. I think Noah Fafita is one. And this really depends on where you valued him at. I never valued Noah as a Devy quarterback. So to me, he's not really a declining asset because I never valued him as an NFL asset. He is a do not draft type of kid in this format, but some did. Some liked him because they paired him with Tet, even though he's on the smaller side, but did not look good against Kansas State. 260 yards, interception, never really went away from Tet, just tried to kind of Tetaroa McMillan, just tried to target him pretty much the whole time. Really inconsistent footwork, smaller frame. Those are the things that kind of run against you as a quarterback, and you're looking at here. I mean, he had good passing grades against New Mexico, Northern Arizona, but then he go against, a very, very good opponent in Kansas State and just was really super inefficient. 61% completion percentage, no touchdowns. I mean, from a rushing standpoint, he always does that pretty well because he does have that frame, but from a passing standpoint, what trends him well over to the NFL side just wasn't there. And then again, also, some had him pegged for Heisman. Some talking about him being the Heisman, especially after that first week. I just don't see it anymore. I think that I never really saw that. I thought maybe Heisman because he's a good college quarterback. But as a Devy prospect, he's definitely gone down. And when you're just looking at the numbers, I think, the one that concerns me the most when you're looking at passing depths and what he's able to do, they're deep, just 65% completion percentage deep. That's scary number there. 2 touchdowns, interception, and a lot of that is just to Tet. If he doesn't have one of the best wide receivers in college football, how does he look? We're going to find that out next year. But I do think overall, as a Devy prospect right now, you have to look at him as being a trending down asset. And then the last guy, I don't really have any numbers for this kid because he can't get off the field, and that's Jurion Dickey. And it's depressing because Dickey is one of those guys when he's coming out injured, and that was always hey, he's coming out injured. What is that going to look like? We were a little concerned about that. But the fact of the matter right now, he's just running wind sprints, right? In his college career, he has nothing this year. Last year, he had a catch in 7 yards. That was it. And that's sad because he was a Des Bryant-esque type prospect. I think now what Dickey is doing is he is trending towards transferring. I can't see him when you're looking at the depth chart. I mean, he is essentially just buried on this depth chart here. Oregon goes in the portal very heavily. We saw that with Evan Stewart. We're going to see that with other guys like Tez too. Tez Johnson. We're going to see that in this offseason. I have a feeling Dickey's going to find himself on a different roster. And then you're really getting worried about him as a Devy prospect and a Devy value. Now, you are drafting him very high. I do think 5th round is probably the highest he got is going in his freshman year. But with that said, people had expectations for Dickey. And I think overall, if you roster him, he's looking like a dead asset. Now, there's always a chance. There's always a chance he pops off, and I hate being negative. But even as a guy that liked Dickey, right? I thought he was Dez. I really loved his tape, but the injury didn't help. I think he came in out of shape. I think this year they kind of passed him by. And for a team that has national championship expectations, I don't think Dickey falls into that plan. So I could definitely see him moving on and being that prospect that we just missed on. And that's just the reality of the Devy format. So that's our, risers and fallers. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? Where are you guys at with these guys? Who are some guys that you like? I know I can't get to everybody. I want to talk about Trey Harris at some point, some of these other guys out there, but how are you feeling about these prospects and their value? Do you think Avery Johnson can be a NFL type quarterback, or am I crazy there? Am I just kind of going off of love and everything that I've talked about with him and my articles? Or, hey, what do you think? What do you think about his prospects at a pro? So as always, appreciate you guys tuning in and checking out the videos here and the Substack and the Patreon. And we'll check you guys next time.